It's been a very painful path to get to this point, but I'd quite simply like to say that I welcome what the government is bringing in today. Reversing the two-child limit will lift 540,000 children out of absolute poverty, and it is unquestionably the right thing to do. Certainly for those children and for their families, but also for our economy, our public services, and for our society as a whole. Children growing up in poverty face worse educational outcomes, poorer physical and mental health, and fewer opportunities in adulthood. As the member for Salford has just pointed out, this has a huge economic cost on our society as well, and investing now a relatively small amount for great gains later is a very sensible thing to be doing. This change will be worth up to £5,000 per year for each of the 500 families, more than 500 families in my Witney constituency who have been impacted by this cap. I have had heartbreaking emails and surgeries, and I'm sure we all have, from constituents impacted by this cap, who have had to skip meals in order to ensure their children don't go without, because their money each month simply doesn't stretch far enough. Our food banks help enormously, but relying on them is not the solution, obviously. So too many children and families have been trapped in poverty because of the previous decision to impose this cap and this government's stubborn decision to keep it until now. And I wish that had happened a year ago, and that would have saved a lot of trouble and stress for the families and children involved, but also for a few members in this chamber tonight. So I commend the Labour MPs who lost the whip for fighting to end this policy for their courage. And I'm sure that it is their voices and actions which have played a large part in bringing this government now to bring forward this legislation. However, while this bill is very narrow in scope, I think we should also recognise that it is only one step towards tackling child poverty, and there is much more we need to do. And that is what the amendment tabled by my colleague, the Honourable Member for Torbay, highlights. Ministers will no doubt have seen the report by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation published, which while welcoming the decision to lift the cap, warned that progress on tackling child poverty as a result of removing the two-child benefit cap will likely stall after April, that's 2 months away, unless this is supported by further follow-up measures. The headlines from that report were that the number of people living in very deep poverty was at the highest level in more than 30 years, based on 2023-24 figures. But now this government must make an absolute priority to address this. That is why we are calling on the government to look at the much wider issues of overall levels of child poverty, levels of destitution and deep poverty among households with children, educational and physical and mental health outcomes for children in households affected by poverty. They need to thoroughly assess this a year after the passage of this bill and report back to the House on its impact. Certainly.
Whether he was aware of the tackling child poverty strategy and the inquiry that the Education and Work and Pensions committees is doing, which is looking at just that, as well as the published data that the Education Secretary published just before Christmas, I think.
Yes, I am, and I congratulate you, well, the member as chair and the committee for doing all that good work, and many thanks. That may encourage the government to take steps that go beyond this welcome but narrow bill to support children and their families who are struggling week to week to get by, including, for example, auto-enrolment of all those who are eligible for free school meals so that children are automatically considered eligible when their parents apply for relevant benefits or financial support, or giving people the ability to juggle caring responsibilities alongside work without falling into hardship by increasing the value of carer benefits, particularly for those on low incomes.